This is our COVID Roundup and CDC update for October 4th, 2024. Diving right in, there are some major concerns with our COVID genetic surveillance program, where all of these black dots are no sequencing data available, meaning that the sequencing data was not collected in those regions. And as you can see, it's near universally everywhere, where this started occurring on September 7th, and by this reporting period of September 28th, it is near universal. And your first thought might be to think, oh, well, this is probably because COVID levels are really low, and that's why the sequencing data is not available. No, we're still at very high levels nationally, where 75% of all facilities are either at moderate or high or very high levels. So the COVID is there, we're just not sequencing it. And to further emphasize this point, we have this post from Jelly Roll Blues stating that they can no longer provide COVID forecasts because the CDC has cut off access to the raw variant proportions data. So it currently appears possible that the CDC is quietly sunsetting the COVID genetic surveillance program. And this is my personal speculation from the available information or lack thereof. Next, the CDC shifted around the XEC lineage in the Pango lineage chart, where it was moved from under KP3 to under JN1, which is incredibly disingenuous, and I'll tell you why in a second. So we know XEC is a recombinant lineage of KS1.1 and KP3.3, meaning that it's a combination of a flirt and a fluke or sluke variant. And since KS 1.1 or any KS is not on this little chart right here, and we know that KP2 is a flirt variant, if we were doing this right, XEC would have a line connecting KP2 and KP3 to it, or at the very least it should just be under the KP3 umbrella, because it's moving further and further away from JN1. It's therefore very scientifically disingenuous to throw XEC directly under the JN1 umbrella, when it's actually multiple mutations and a recombination away. The reason they're doing this is because they want to put it closer to JN1 so that it looks like it's better matched for Novavax, I think. That again is my speculation, but this is something that you got to keep your eye out for because this is actually very scientifically disingenuous. Next, also this week, the CDC launched the Respiratory Illness Data Channel, where they combine the flu, RSV, and COVID data together. So first, right off the bat, since COVID is a systemic full-body illness, I don't think it's appropriate to throw it under the respiratory illness category. But regardless, there's three major issues with this right off the bat. The first is that they take the average of all three and give a report saying it's low right now, where they're averaging the COVID, flu, and RSV values. So since these are very minimal and this is listed as moderate, then they're saying the average of all these is low, which again, very disingenuous because people are going to think, oh, COVID, not a big deal right now, it's low, when actually they're listing it as moderate levels. But again, that's incredibly inaccurate because right on the NWSS site that they provide, it's at high levels, as shown right here. So they're either using a different scale that's more forgiving, or they have very poor data correlation within their own system. Next, the report on emergency department visits in the United States. Since this is currently voluntary, I'm not sure where they're getting these numbers because nothing is going to pick up until November. That's when everything is going to be mandated to be reported. Currently, we know for COVID data, only about 33% of hospitals are voluntary reporting. So this data is going to have a high degree of inaccuracies. And even when we look at the hospital data by the CDC, there's no designation of this because in May this stopped, where again we're going from 100% of hospitals being mandated to report to only 33% after May, which makes it look like the COVID hospitalization trends are heading down. But if you say that, okay, this is 33% of the data, so it's 1/3 the size it should be, and we scale this up 3 times, then it's actually exceeding the winter peak of hospitalizations from 2022 during this past summer. So there really needs to be a designation saying, hey, during this time, we only had 33% of hospitals reporting the data and we had this level. And using simple scaling metrics, if we're like at 5 or 4.5 and we scale that by 3, then we're up to somewhere between like 13 and 15, which is much higher than these peaks over here. Which is why it's very important to know the data behind the data and to follow what's actually happening. Finally, moving on to Canada and their epidemiologic tracker, we saw increases in KP3.1.1, where they just started segmenting out this MC clade, where when we look to nextstrain.org, we see that the MC clades are descendant of KP3.1.1. Here's a few more of them, just for reference. So these popped up really fast and will likely be a contender for XEC, where at this first reporting of them, they're collectively at 11.1% of variance and proportion, while XEC is making up 7.2% of variance and proportion in Canada. Next, moving over to Raj's COVID variant tracker, we've seen local increases in KP3.1.1 and XEC. We're starting to see more of the MC clade, and additionally, XEC has picked up a new subvariant. Breaking down to a week-to-week comparison, we have decreases in KP2 and LB1 families. KP3.1.1 has started increasing again, and we're still seeing growth in XEC and MC families, where the MC clade is rapidly developing new subvariants, so it seems the competition for this winter will be between XEC and MC. Moving on to New York State's wastewater surveillance map. As a reminder, anything that's dark blue is low levels of COVID in the wastewater, anything that is light blue is moderate levels, and anything from yellow to bright red is high levels of COVID in the wastewater. For reporting wastewater facilities, since last week it's dropped from about 68% down to 64% at the highest levels, but notably nothing is at low levels in New York State currently. Everything is at either moderate or high levels of COVID in the wastewater. Moving on to the 28 reporting wastewater facilities to wastewater scan in California, we're starting to see increasing levels once more. So while we had a false alarm up here where we just had a signal pop, I believe now we are at the official start of our winter wave. And similarly, when we look to the 148 reporting wastewater facilities to wastewater scan in the US, we see that same second signal, and then we're starting to see increases once more. So it's now very likely that we're at the start of our COVID winter wave.